So if you set up to invest and you're only looking at an investment outside of the real estate market, like in a small business or a franchise, we love franchises, by the way, of around 100,000. And in real estate, you're looking at about 250 to 300 out of pocket. So for around 100,000, you can own a business, run that business, hire people, and create your own destiny. I don't know about you, but to me and Ruben, I know that sounds a whole lot better than having someone else be in control of your destiny.
Who's this? Oh, you're an entrepreneur? Oh, you're a real estate investor. Oh, you're trying to learn from those who did it. Well, come into the lab then. Put your white coat on, gloves on, notepad, and let's build, y'all.
Real estate experiment. What is happening, y'all? Today I have the pleasure of having Lauren Cohen step into the lab with us, and I have to say we're certainly overdue, Lauren, just because when you and I connected, it was end of 2021. You were able to add so much value to me, and you really spoke dearly to me as well. So I definitely want to have you back into the lab, as we call it. But I got to give you the introduction that you deserve, because you've done so much in our space as investors. And I think you're really serving a unique niche, which is what we always talk about here in this episode, brought to you by investortalent.com. We talk about niching and serving people. And Lauren is just so qualified right now to be on this episode. Again, you come from a very interesting background, Lauren. You know, being you're a lawyer, you're also a licensed realtor, you work with investors, and yourself, you had a hiccup at the time that kind of really sparked this kind of you going down this avenue and serving multiple people. And at the same time, you really help. We were just talking about this offline, coming up with a structure on how to help investors invest across the border with, again, easy to do, but at the same time, it's easy to do when you have the right person, the right guide, and the right team like yourself to do it, because there's a lot of, pitfalls and potential oversights that you might see. So first of all, I want to welcome you into the lab. Thanks for making the time. And it's such a pleasure to have you here. How are you doing today, Lauren?
Thank you. I appreciate being here. I appreciate you accommodating my schedule, and it's a pleasure to be here as well.
Absolutely. So we were just talking about this, and we talked about this, personally as well. I'm a Canadian here in the US, and with that, one might think, okay, how do I get into the US market? Because as we know, the US market has definitely a lot of advantages when it comes to investing. When I'm looking across, my window here, a multifamily, I mean, there's I don't think if there's a higher concentration of multifamily apartments anywhere else when it comes to this kind of product. But then there's also single family, there's duplexes, there's short-term rentals. Who are your services for, Lauren? Who do you serve, and who are they not for?
So I'm definitely much more niche than I was in the past. And until 2 weeks ago, 90% of my clients, 80% of my clients were from Canada. I work with people from all over the world. Why Canada? Well, I am from Canada originally, just like Ruben, and I'm actually a dual citizen. And like he said, I hit some pitfalls of my own. My now ex-husband was deported on the way back from our honeymoon to Thailand. And that is what prompted me to get started on my immigration path, not my personal immigration path. I was already on that. So I got my green card and he was denied his, and the rest is history. But it did force me or cause me to think and ponder and figure out, what did I want to do? And I really wanted to find a way to help other people avoid a similar fate. I wrote a book in 2017 called Finding Your Silver Lining in the Business Immigration Process. I've also written a book on franchises and how they franchise, and how foreign investors make such awesome franchisees, because they really do, because they're driven and motivated, as Ruben and I are. But really, I think my target is people that are looking to do things the right way. So there are people that are always looking for a quick buck, and they are never going to work with me. But the people that want to make sure that they set up the right structure and have all the right steps in place and all the right people and professionals, and are willing to spend a little bit of money to avoid problems later and avoid future pitfalls that could destroy their business, that's the person that wants to work with me. That's my client.
I love that. And I appreciate you kind of highlighting, what you do and who you're for and who you're served, because that helps paint a picture. But I don't think people, realize, and I think if you're, international, you do, that there's a lot of implications that come with, coming into another country when you're not visiting and you're looking to establish yourself. Can you talk about the type of ways that, let's say, a Canadian who's listening, because I know we have a large listener base who's back home in Canada who's listening, who's like, you know what, like maybe it's a snowbird, or maybe it's a passive income, or maybe it's actually coming into the US, but how do I get in? Because I know that there's multiple, I know there's NAFTA for obviously Canadians, but there's also, maybe you talk to me about how some of those visas can actually also be, not as beneficial as some of the ones that you offer. You're able to, not that you offer visas, but the ones you're able to help your clients get. So why don't you talk a little bit about the options that maybe, again, specifically Canadians might be looking at, and if not even international. I know that, again, we have a good listenership with Canadians, but what are some of the options that I can look at when I'm thinking of coming into the country and I am an investor, or I would like to become an investor? What are my options?
So thanks for the question. First of all, I will say that Canadians do have kind of a special status. We don't have easier green cards or easier visas, but we do have access to all the visas pretty much, except asylum, which people are asking me about all the time now from Canada. And nope, that's not available. But I actually originally came in under NAFTA, and I had H-1Bs, and I was a worker, an employee, and I got my green card through employment. My employer sponsored me, and then I became a citizen. That is not the best way to do it, especially for those that don't have an advanced degree. Okay, I'm a lawyer, so it was a little easier for me. But if you want to have control of your destiny, and until I became a green card holder, I really had no control over what I was doing. I was not an entrepreneur. I did not have my own business. I worked for somebody else, and that's what the work visas allow. What I like for people that are entrepreneurial or want to be in the real estate business is to focus on an investor visa as an option. And that investor visa then gives you the control. You're in the driver's seat. Now, there is such a thing as how to immigrate through real estate, which is actually my signature program. But it's not easy, and it's not like you just buy one or two single family homes and you're done. It doesn't even matter if you spend $10 million on each of them, because what you need to do is you need to have a business in the US. So passive investment, which is what real estate investing is generally about, is never going to pave a path to an immigration visa, okay? You have to be actively involved in running a business. You have to show that you need boots on the ground. So our superpower is in transitioning a passive real estate investor into an active real estate business owner. And that's what will pave the path for you to not only invest, but also potentially obtain a visa. Now, it's important to understand, even for Canadians, that it is not business as usual when you cross borders to invest. Just because let's say Joe down the street here, sets up a limited liability company, does not mean that you, as a Canadian that is still maintaining Canadian tax residency, should follow suit. And way too many Canadians do that. They set up an LLC, they go online, they do some cheap and cheerful LLC for a couple of bucks. And let me tell you what's going to happen. And I'm not a tax expert, and I want to be very clear. I have a tax expert on my team. Okay, I don't do anything without the tax expert's blessing. Literally, I really don't. But what's important to understand is if you set up that LLC, you're going to probably be subject to double taxation. Why? Because Canada does not recognize limited liability companies. It's a disregarded entity. It's a complicated legal thing we're not going to talk about, but basically, if you add in a layer, you might not have that double taxation problem. But don't just set it up because it looks good, or your brother did it, or your friend did it, or whatever, because everybody's tax situation is different. And it also is going to, the fact of whether or not you're going to be potentially getting a visa is also going to impact the structure. So you need to really think about your short and long-term goals from the get-go and create a strategy around them. So I work with a lot of people, Ruben, that are just setting up because they don't ever want to move, or maybe they don't think they do, but they still need to have that proper setup, that tax guidance, that legal guidance, structure set up, whatever the entities are in whatever states they're investing in. And then if you'd like to also pursue a visa, that's a whole other division. And you can possibly do it with a complementary business, such as a property management franchise or some other franchise in the real estate realm. So it's really a matter of not trying to do things, not trying to cut corners and do things, just like we see people going off market deals, right? Rather than going through realtors, or they try to go and find FSBOs for sale by owner if they're doing single family. Listen, there's a reason that the people aren't working with realtors. So every time I've seen clients or walk clients through off-market deals, they fall apart at some point because you're not being represented by professionals. It's the same when you're dealing with investing across borders.
I love what you said about, highlighting the difference between, coming in, earning a work visa through work. Because from what I've heard and what people are most familiar with is just that. The new concept that you bring, like, immigration through real estate or through business, is something that I think, our listener base needs to understand. Can you talk about the difference maybe between the job employment visas versus the business and also real estate? And you made it very clear, by the way, that this real estate would need to be active, but just maybe give a little bit of a contrast between the two, because I know you and I have been there, and I think it's important for people to see the other side, because not too many people hear of people starting maybe businesses or maybe have an existing business that they want to extend in the US. What does that look like?
So there's a few problems with the job option. One of the biggest ones is that there's a limit to what visas are available. Even if you're going under NAFTA, for example, you have to be in certain categories. There's not a lot of categories that are available. And then you have to get a job offer. And you have to have a sponsor that's willing to write that job offer as a sponsor. Now, let me tell you that I have a lot of people coming to me on a daily basis asking about getting jobs. And I have some amazing colleagues who are recruiters, and they can't work with people that are looking for sponsors because it's very challenging to get a sponsor, okay? On top of that, if you get a sponsor, what if the job doesn't work out, okay? Then suddenly you and your family are gone, bye-bye. You can't just, you can find another job, but then you have to go through the process again. Or sometimes there's substitute or replacement, but you have no control. And for those of us that especially are real estate investors, isn't that really because you want to have more control over your destiny? So why would you then give that control up to get a job or replace your job? And then not only have you be dependent on the employer for your income, but also for your status. Because if the employment ends, so does your visa, okay? So if you set up to invest and you're only looking at an investment outside of the real estate market, like in a small business or a franchise, we love franchises, by the way, of around 100,000. And in real estate, you're looking at about 250 to 300 out of pocket. So for around 100,000, you can own a business, run that business, hire people, and create your own destiny. I don't know about you, but to me and Ruben, I know that sounds a whole lot better than having someone else be in control of your destiny.
So that's very interesting, because and you've mentioned this a few times, and I try to be very cognizant of, the keywords and some gems that you drop, because I think it's important for us to just, highlight those. So one obviously is control, which again, a lot of us listening to this is we want that control, right? And so we understand, okay, one avenue is meant to be, okay, very job dependent, job specific. And to your point, I was almost getting the goosebumps because I've been there, right? Of a job ending earlier than the visa term, and then you needed to it's just a whole
nightmare
process. You don't want to deal with it,
especially now because everything's backlogged.
Oh my gosh, and I just went through this as well. So the other option, and I thought it was fascinating when you brought this up to me, and we made a few connections offline as well, as franchisees. This is key because I talk about this all the time, and I'm part of masterminds for people buying proofs of concept, the way this podcast is a proof of concept, but I want to hear it from you. Why franchise? Why is that the lowest hanging fruit? Or why is that maybe a better option rather than a startup?
Yeah, lots of reasons. Okay, franchises are turnkey. The government loves franchises. They don't love startups because they like them because there's risk, and your money is supposed to be at risk when you're investing in a business. Franchises are models that the government understands. Now, remember, whoever is reviewing your application is a government employee, and they don't understand everything about your business. Okay, so they're reading this business plan that we write, maybe they're reading it, maybe, and they're just checking off boxes. For franchises, for the most part, those boxes are almost pre-checked because they know you're investing in a proven, like you said, proven concept that has some type of track record. Okay, and that's really important because at the end of the day, that is going to build the credibility of what you're investing in. So franchises give you brand support, marketing support, training support. Look, no matter what you think, and Canadians think, it's business as usual in the US, don't we, Ruben? And it's not, is it? It's not.
Yeah, no.
Until you're here, you don't know. So what I say to my clients is, you have so much to think about when you're moving your family. Okay, when I moved, I was single. I didn't have any children. I didn't have a partner at the time. So it was just me to worry about. But when you're married and or have a family, there's a whole lot more at stake than just you and your livelihood. So you have to think about that when you're making the decision. And it's really not that easy to adjust to life. Yeah, it's nice to be in Florida, let's say, where it's warm and you're like, oh, I don't want to deal with the snow anymore. Yeah, all those things are nice, but you still have to live your life. And I say, you've got enough to deal with. Why add to it by creating a startup business that has inherent risk? Now, that doesn't mean you couldn't own a piece of a startup as long as you're not taking employment income from it. You're allowed to own other business interests and real estate for that matter. But I always like franchises because they're so easy to run and there's so much support. And I just say, why reinvent the wheel?
Absolutely. And that's why we're here. Question on that, Lauren, is there a certain amount that your business has to gross or a certain amount that you need to have? Is it, 3 people, staffed? Can you have contractors? Do they need to be employees? Could they be on 1099s? Do they have to be W-2s? Like, what are some of those, again, I'm sending you down the road of speaking to an expert, and we have one here, but I want to just hear the level of things you need to factor into this decision as you're thinking about, oh, this sounds like a neat idea. Would you be able to drop some insight on that, Lauren?
So when you are on an investor visa or any type of visa for that matter, generally speaking, you want to hire people because you want to show that you're creating some type of economic impact. And hiring people, sometimes it will include 1099s, but we like to see at least some employees. Okay. Now I have 8 people working for me and none of them are employees. From time to time, I'll bring in an employee I give them their freedom, flexibility, but I also am not, my visa, I don't have a visa and my business isn't dependent on that visa. So you should ideally hire between 2 and 5 employees over a 5-year period. Now, sometimes some of them could be part-time, some full-time, some independent contractors, but I don't really love to see companies that don't have at least a few employees in their business plan. Now, the business plan is a 5-year business plan generally. So what happens over those 5 years? Look, let's be honest, 2.5 years ago, somebody would have written a business plan to get a visa. They didn't really plan for COVID to happen, right? So true. Things change. So now for people that are doing renewals during the time of COVID, they have to acknowledge those changes and say how they dealt with them. What did you do to pivot and so on? So I think it's not an easy answer, and it really does depend. Now, in the past, up until COVID, you could not get an E2 unless you had an office and a physical office, bricks and mortar. Now it's possible because they realized, there was no choice. Like we couldn't go to the office, right? So it opened their eyes. Now, remember, the government is a little slow to respond to changes. But I'll give you an example of a huge change that is happening today. Now, this is not airing today. So this is March 14th of 2022. And this huge change is there's a program called EB5. I don't know if you know of it, Ruben. EB5 is a program where people basically invest a certain amount of money and create 10 new permanent full-time jobs in correlation to that investment and obtain a green card. Until today, that amount is 500,000 and $1 million, depending on the location. As of, I think, 4 p.m. today, that amount is changing to 800,000 and 1.05 million. Why 1.05? I don't know. It's kind of an unusual number. Could have been 1.1, but it's 1.05. So it's very, I just had I did 6 green cards over the past 2 weeks with people that wanted to get in as quickly as possible and avoid that change. This change was only formally finalized on, I think, Friday or Thursday. Guess what? We had a client that we just processed, and we're going to get their application in on time before the amount changes, before 4 p.m. Eastern today, 3 p.m. Central, I believe. So it's been a crazy weekend. But wow. That's just you're dealing with an area of law that is constantly changing, and it's changing based on a lot of politics and a lot, like this is part of the omnibus bill, which is going through today as soon as Biden signs it, right? It's signed by both houses already. So immigration is an ever-changing area. And honestly, what my answers are today could be different than my answers in a month from now. Yeah. But for the most part, the non-immigrant visa processing remains relatively consistent, other than timelines and queues because of COVID, again, which held up everything.
Experimentation. I always experiment. And the reason why is I'm always trying to find the best tool, the best method, and the best vehicle to help me get to my end goal. One of the tools that we use in the short-term rental space is Guesty for Hosts. Now, experimentation, you know that I love to test things, and I wouldn't be sharing with you anything that I don't use myself. As a short-term rental superhost, Airbnb superhost, listings that we own and co-host at the same time, I can tell you that there's no better software that allows us to streamline our business. Right now, currently, there's actually 3 properties right now that are currently where guests are checking in, and I'm here with you, and I did not need to send in check-in instructions for these current properties, right? There are multiple ways that you can streamline your operation from on the front end and on the back end, from being able to create a website, from being able to get income reports for your team, to looking at statistics, to setting up auto reviews, to integrating your smart lock so that you don't have to sit here and send every day and remind yourself to send the passcodes for your smart locks. No, instead you can integrate directly the exact same way that you can actually send your cleaners a link so that they don't have to remind themselves when they need to go to cleanings. There's text reminders that go out. There's links that can go out for them. This is a tool that if you're looking to give a smooth experience for your team on the back end, it will truly reflect, and it does, for your guests on the front end. Make sure you go to host.guesty.com and use our unique link. Our unique link will be in our bio, in the show notes. If you're currently watching this, you'll see it right here at the bottom of my screen. Use this unique link so that you can tell Guesty that I sent you. You don't want to miss out on this. You need a PMS, property management software, in your business if you're looking to operate like a super host that you deserve to be, so that your guests can have the best experience that they deserve to have at your properties. Again, that host.guesty.com. Use our unique link that is here on the screen, in the bio, and in the show notes if you're listening to this, guys. Happy hosting. Got it. No, I appreciate that, and such a serendipity, right, on this day that we're recording the episode for this to happen. So just so far, I always like to leave our audience with some tactical, almost like table of content, so you can dive deeper. And obviously, we'll have some resources that Lauren can provide. But we talked about this a little bit in the beginning. Some Canadians, or whoever may have heard of, the TN visas and which has multiple, I guess, work, what would you call it?
Categories.
Categories within those, within that. And I think there's about 60 or so. But what you just talked about one, EB5, I know there's E2, there's E1 or L1. And can you just really quick just give some big, I guess, pros, cons, maybe of each of them, or actually just give us some insight as to what they might be from your experience and what you think is, again, all circumstances are different, but which one you see has the best kind of conversion, and as to why that might be, just for our audience, so we have some kind of reference there.
Yeah, so it's going to be hard for me to summarize these. I'm going to give you a resource to share.
Awesome.
E2 and E1 are based on treaty. E2 is treaty investor visa. E1 is treaty trader visa. Based on treaty means it's a bilateral treaty between the US and the investor or beneficiary's home country, like Canada, most European countries, Mexico, Argentina, Colombia, but not Brazil, not Russia, not India, not China, not South Africa. So anyway, the point is that if there's no treaty, then there's no E2 or E1 available. L1 is an intracompany transfer of a senior executive or manager. That does not require that you own the company. It requires that there be common ownership between the foreign branch and the US branch. It could be a subsidiary, it could be an affiliate. And they also cannot come if you're the only employee at the foreign company. It has to be a substantial business. Now, E2 and E1 do not need to lead directly to green cards, although there are some creative ways. So that's about working with us. But an L1 does. However, L1s are often challenged because, and you also initially generally get a year, and then it's up to 7 years total, whereas E2 and E1 are unlimited renewals, usually 5 years every time. The H-1B is an advanced degree visa, which you can get for up to 4 years, but it's a lottery based. And I think that it's March 14th, and they're closing the doors on that as they do each year on April 1st. So the TN is based on being in a certain category. If you're from Mexico or Canada, you can be in one of these categories and qualify. And it's really the most simple process. And I believe now it's up to 3 years renewable. Whereas when I did it, it was every year I would have to go and renew it. It was a total headache. And there is no direct path to a green card from a TN. It's completely temporary. From an H-1B, there is a path. That's actually how I did it. I did an H-1B and then a green card. So that's how I did it. Then there's EB1A, EB1C, EB2, and the EB5 that I mentioned. So EB1A is an extraordinary ability. It means that you satisfy certain criteria to qualify as a person with extraordinary ability, generally like a professor or a researcher, something like that.
Or like athletes and stuff?
Yes, correct.
Yeah?
Athletes and authors and like that, yes. Now an O1 can also be an athlete or an author or an actor or something, and an entertainer.
And you're making a case for yourself when you're doing those, right? Like you really have to present,
yes,
like, okay, best time seller,
right.
Like you're really promoting. I mean, it's interesting. Okay, wow.
Yeah, you have to meet the criteria. And then EB2, which is actually how I got my green card. I take it back. It was not H-1B to green card. I was on an H-1B. I was in the process of doing a green card, and it was taking forever. So I said to my lawyer, because I didn't do it at the time, I said to my lawyer, who I still work with, I think we should switch this, because I was on some kind of appeal and it was like literally taking forever. I was so frustrated. And he said, no, you're not going to qualify. I said, yes, I am. And guess what? I did. So EB2 is a national interest waiver. So the EB1, EB2, EB5, what the 1, 2, and 5 are is preference. That means you're in a certain queue. EB1 is the top, EB2, right? And EB stands for employment-based. Employment-based, first preference, second preference, fifth preference. Third preference is agricultural workers. Fourth preference is, I can't even remember, but I've never even done one. So it's, my goodness, I totally forget. But anyway, that's basically, I sent you a link in the chat for a download about all the visas that basically is like a little cute little thing that shows you what each visa, like a little graphic that shows you what each visa requires.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. And I know our listeners will as well. If you're driving, keep your hands on a wheel. It'll be in the show notes for sure. And one thing I want to just transition into before we wrap up is I want to talk about what you talked about before, which is your specialty. And I think it really resonate with Experiment Nation. It's about immigrating via real estate, right? And you talk about property management. A question for you is what about, can someone come in if maybe you're gonna do a syndication,
No.
multifamily? Ooh, okay, awesome. Why is that? I'm just curious because I think a lot of our listeners might be. Is it just it's just completely different? It's not considered a company, or could you not have a company that does some syndication, or would you establish a company first, then have that leg, just so we're clear on what you can or cannot do? That was a very hard no too, Lauren. Gosh, what happened here?
So you cannot, the reason
Yeah.
you cannot invest in a syndication is because what is a syndication by nature? Passive.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Can you become a general partner?
Yes, that's a different story.
Excellent.
So if you
Okay, great.
develop the syndication and you're
Yeah.
the one raising the money,
Yep.
potentially, yes, that could qualify because it's a business.
Okay.
Different if you're an investor. Sorry if that's what you meant, but yeah.
Yeah, no,
And a
that's
lot
right.
of people come to me and say, can I buy stock in this company? No. Can I
No, yeah.
invest in this
Has to
syndication?
be active,
No.
active investing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for real estate, the government doesn't love investing through real estate because you're getting a tangible asset and they want your money to be at risk. So what you have to do is make sure that you buy enough real estate to qualify that to like Airbnbs, multifamily, mixed use, stuff like that is much better than any single family ever will be. And also having, using the having to hire people to run these businesses is a big part. So if you're investing in a couple of single family homes, you really don't need a groundskeeper. But if you're buying 2 or 3 apartment buildings, you might need a groundskeeper and a logistics person and a superintendent and a whatever, right? So it's about figuring out who do you realistically need to hire to bring this from a passive investment to an active business. And that's important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think that's really going to resonate. And to your point, I think we understand. We've had a lot of multifamily syndicators come on as general partners. You have limited partners. You want to make sure, from what I heard, that you're the GP who's hiring the property management or maybe keeping it in house if you want. That would probably serve you well
Right.
to have it in house.
Absolutely. Much
To
better.
then being able to pay again. There's so many different things where you're operating like a real business. So I think that's super key. Let's
can
talk
I
about-
add something, Ruben?
Yeah,
I'd
absolutely,
love to invite
absolutely,
you to join us. So my colleague, who's in Calgary, and she runs a company called Creative Real Estate Academy, and she's been doing real estate investing cross borders for a while. So she and I actually developed something called Strategic Real Estate Investing in a Box. And basically what it is it's teaching Canadians mainly how to invest in US real estate and get a visa as a part of it. So it's a business in a box. And we teach you who to hire, when to hire them, how to do your first investment. We walk you through the investments. We find you the deals. It's literally in a box. Now, why does that work? It would seem passive, but it's not. We're just showing you how to run your real estate business as a business. And that business on its own can qualify for the visa.
You guys might need to start your franchise, Lauren. I don't know. That might be.
I'm not franchising it yet, but yes, I know.
That might be a nice little upsell there to what you got going on. That's neat. Yeah, I would love more information on that. That's super neat. Let's talk about it's tax season is coming up. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. We talk about double taxations, etc. I know you're not. Again, you hire and you have someone on your team who's a tax expert, and so we're not going to talk about per se the strategies, but what have you seen as a big overlook? I think you stated this in the beginning. I really want to bring it home about getting double taxed and things that people are making the biggest mistakes on. Again, from your experience working with your team and the tax experts that you have, that we should keep in mind when we're working with a company like yours, of things that we should really consider if we're looking to invest in the States.
Yeah, so the most important thing I think that you can do for yourself is not just go online and set up entities and structure that like you see people doing, or go on some, one of those cheap and cheerful set up your business sites, because you're going to set it up wrong. That's one of the biggest mistakes people make, is thinking that if they have an LLC, they're going to be able to invest and get tax benefits, and you're not. Additionally, there's a lot of companies. I work with a couple that lend specifically to Canadians investing in non-owner occupied US real estate, and they require you to have an entity. Don't just set up that entity because they require you to have it without speaking to a lawyer and a tax advisor, because you will end up doing it wrong and end up paying the CRA or the IRS or both.
Because they
all of your
communicate,
hard-earned-
from what I understand, right?
Pardon me?
They communicate, the IRA.
Oh, they talk. I mean, they
Yeah.
may not talk every day, but they talk. It's money. Why
Just
not?
enough. Yeah, let's see what we could do. Oh, that's so awesome. I mean, Lauren, I can't thank you enough for, coming in here. I think what we really want to do here is plant the seed. What you're showing here is obviously there's a lot of, structures and pillars that you got to put into your business. And I love what you said is understanding your end goal, which is what it really comes down to fundamentally, understanding where you're going, what the end goal is, and then reverse engineer into finding, again, professionals like you who are able to call out some of those blind spots and highlight those for you to be properly structured to move forward to leverage, again, what's it existing today, the infrastructure or the opportunities that exist around investing in businesses and investing in real estate to making your way out of into the country. Is there a question that you wished I would have asked you that I didn't ask that you feel is just, Ruben, I wish I could get this out there, but you didn't give me the opportunity? Is there anything, Lauren, that comes to mind that we didn't cover today that you think could really serve our audience?
Why should you move to the US?
Why should one move to the US?
I don't know. I'm asking you. I'm throwing the question at you. Ha ha. You did it. Okay.
Mhm.
I'm going to tell you something that really I think is very relevant right now. When I was little, my parents used to talk about moving to Florida. They never did anything about it. They talked about it. We used to come every year. We used to drive down, 3 days of driving. Yeah, it was interesting. Couldn't survive that right now. I can barely survive driving to Orlando. The point is that it's a lot easier than you think. Okay, it's a lot easier to invest in US real estate, get better cap rates than in Canada, have a great opportunity for return, have lots of opportunities to build and leverage your business, and potentially to get an immigration visa to live and work here. Now, why would you do that? Well, some people get their visas and don't even want to move to the US. So the advantages of getting a visa are you get a social security number, you get to build your US credit, you get to, do all the things that are as if you were in the US, and you have the freedom to go back and forth as you choose. So it's an insurance policy in your pocket, and that's really what it comes down to.
I love that. That's the word that I got from you when you first told me, the insurance policy that you're creating for yourself, which again is you never know. All right, things change really quickly, and again, the advantages and the inventory that we see here is very different product. So, Lauren, I definitely want to give you a big thanks. Listen, you have tons of resources that we are going to include in the show notes. Click in the link below. I mean, there's investing across borders visa avatars. There's the steps to follow when embarking on the U.S. Real estate. There's the free resources from the E2 steps required to being able to even reach out to Lauren to ask her questions if you need to, and again, possibly being able to join her team. She's very selective in who she works with, rightfully so, because she's looking to work with those who are serious. And obviously, if you're listening to this podcast, you're very serious, and you're very focused on where you want to go. So, Lauren, is there where else, besides all the resources that you give, we want to also give back to you and bring traffic your way, give you a follow, or whatever the case might be, subscribe to your podcast, get your book? Where else can we tune in and find out more about what you're doing, so our listeners have some very clear call to actions here?
Pretty much everything we do is branded around investing across borders, investingacrossborders.net. We also have realestateacrossborders.com, where you can find out about our programs. And we just launched a course, realestateacrossborders.com/IAB series. That's IAB standing for Investing Cross Borders. So everything is housed on that site in terms of our landing pages. And you can find us anywhere. We have a Facebook group. We're very big on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. again, all around investing across borders. And I also, as I mentioned to Ruben right before we started, I just recently built, I didn't build it, just saying, a bot so that you can go and ask your questions there. And it's really easy. It's seamless. You go in, and if there's additional questions that the bot doesn't have the answers to, they send it to us and we respond. And that's asklaurenesq.com, asklaurenesq.com. It's fun. And we've been getting some rave reviews about it. So hopefully you'll give it a shot.
That's amazing. That's really neat. I love that. I know we talked about it in the beginning, but it's really neat you being able to kind of offer that as a resource for people, and then you're able to connect with you. So good for you, Lauren. Thank you so much for stepping in the lab.
Pleasure.
Guys,
thank you.
All the resources are here. Keep your hands on the wheel. We'll make sure we'll include all of those there for you. And just like that, we are out.